We are athletes playing this instrument, and you have to train as such if you really want to be on top of your game.
You seem like someone who's always been focused and serious and intentional. Where did you get that from?
Some drummers can just smile all day while they're playing, you know, it's like, I can't do that, you know? I want my drums to have a fidelity, sonically pleasing quality on the stage. You never know who's going to be in the audience. Every time you play, you got to play like you're doing an audition because you don't know. It was because of that gig that Peter recommended me for basically the rest of my career.
And that leads to you getting the Simon and Garfunkel Reunion Tour.
That's correct.
And so at that point, you're 23 years old?
That is also correct.
What was market rate back then for a gig like that?
I actually started to work with guys like Nile Rodgers. With Nile, I worked on Diana Ross, George Benson, Madonna, and at the Bottom Line gig is where Chick had found out about me. And that's when he asked me to join him and John and do this Elektric Band thing.
With Elektric Band, how did you guys write music?
I never got a drum chart, ever. I always got a piano score. Chick was under contract, and there was a record coming due. And Chick was like, I don't have it. Right? And that's the record we won a Grammy for.
At this point, are you like...
Burnt out? Yes.
No.
Yeah, I said, Chick, I got to go, man. You know, with Mike and his music, especially in the trio situation, man, it's a demanding gig for a drummer.
What goes into developing your Vic Firth signature sticks?
This stick took 2.5 years to design through hundreds of prototypes.
How did you think to put holes in the cymbals?
I remember listening to GADD on records and, you know, I was like, God, this crash cymbal, what the heck is he playing? It sounds like I don't know what it sounds like, but it's just fantastic, you know. Then I'd go to see him play and I realized that half his cymbals were cracked.
How do you feel when you show up to a concert and you see a drummer playing your cymbal line?
Depends on how they're playing them.
Hey-oh.
Go. Let's go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Today's guest is one of the most influential drummers of all time. He's in the Modern Drummer Hall of Fame, and he's been voted in the top 25 greatest drummers of all time. His name is Dave Weckl. Dave is personally one of my favorite drummers ever. He has influenced me since I was a young kid, so I'm so excited that I got to spend so much time with him today, diving deep. This is a 2.5-hour deep dive with Dave Weckl. I believe it's the deepest interview that Dave has ever done. So very grateful for the time with him. Thank you, Dave. I learned so much in this, and I hope that you do as well. So we go deep into where Dave got his ferocious practice routine from, how he became Dave Weckl and his sound with all of his physical and mental abilities. Then, of course, we go into how he got the gig with Simon and Garfunkel, which changed his career. And then, of course, his relationship with Chick Corea and the making of the Elektric Band and the Acoustic Band. We go into how he created all of his educational DVDs and became the master clinician and educator that he is, and all of his solo albums. We go into it all. I think we covered the entire spectrum and career of the amazing guy that is Dave Weckl. So I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. I want to give a big shout out to our friends at DistroKid. DistroKid is the fastest way to get your music onto Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, TikTok, and 150 other platforms worldwide. For as little as $2 a month, you can upload as much music as you would like, and you can keep 100% of the profits. You can do splits and split the money with your collaborators however you'd like, and they have a bunch of other features. They're a great platform. I've been using DistroKid for years, and I really love the people over there. They really care about music. So if you're interested in using it, you can go to distrokid.com/VIP/Elmo and get 20% off your first year. distrokid.com/VIP/Elmo. I want to thank our friends at Zildjian, specifically Joe Testa. Thank you, Joe, for connecting me with Dave and making this interview happen. I'm using the Zildjian Alchemy headphones. These are awesome. They look great. They sound great. I really, really love them. If you're interested in using them, I'll put a link in the description here. So thank you so much to our friends at Zildjian. Also, thank you so much for all the love and support we've been getting in the comments. We read them all. We've been responding to as many as possible. And if you aren't yet subscribed, we ask you a favor. Please subscribe or follow us wherever you are listening to Go with Elmo. Over 50% of you are not yet subscribed and are listening every single week. So we appreciate your love. And that's one easy way that you can support us for free is just by subscribing or following us. And if you leave a review, that is bonus. If you're a drummer and you don't know this yet, we have one of the deepest drum archives I think that's available on the internet. I've interviewed so many of my favorite drummers on this channel. You can check them all out. So some of the drummers that we have, of course, as of today, Dave Weckl. We have Steve Smith, Thomas Lang, Luke Holland, Narda Michael Walden. 2 interviews with John J.R. Robinson, Omar Hakim, Larnell Lewis, Devin Sticks Taylor, Mark Juliana, Ronald Bruner Jr., Daru Jones, Grayson Nakrutman, Nate Smith, Brian Fraser Moore, and so many others. So just go on to our channel and you can see a whole playlist of all the drummers. So dive deep and have a great time and learn everything you've ever wanted to learn from all of your favorite drummers. Okay, that's enough from me. Now, without further ado, here is my interview with the one, the only, Dave Weckl. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Sitting with me today is one of the greatest drummers of all time.
Oh boy.
He went from the Elektric Band to executing his master plan. He's played with Simon to Stern, Brecker, Benson, and Chick. Now drummers everywhere play his cymbals and sticks. Your favorite drummers call him Next Level Special. Make a ton of noise for Dave Weckl!
Elmo, I don't think anybody can introduce a podcast guest quite like you, my man. I have to say, got to give it up.
That means a lot, my friend. Great to see you, Dave.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me here.
Okay, so born in St. Louis, started drumming at a real early age. And I know that you, it seemed like as quickly as possible, wanted to get into the scene. You were like, I need to get to the East Coast. I need to be around the greats. And I know you eventually went to college in Connecticut and then got into the New York scene. But I guess before that, because when I think of you, you seem like someone who's always been focused and serious and intentional. Where did you get that from?
Father. Yeah, my dad. I mean, my parents, my mom too. I was an only kid, so there was no, sibling interjection or if I, quite honestly would say distraction or competition. I was the last attempt at 3 tries. My mom was a very small lady and had difficulty having children. So I was kind of last attempt and, spoiled rotten. I was
The miracle child.
Started to gain weight at an early age because they were just like, feed him, keep him alive,
Make sure he's healthy.
Which was quite the opposite,
I was the first my mom had 3 miscarriages before me, and then I was the first to make it too. So I had that same spoiled feed him fat kid thing. It happened. I felt it.
Yeah, my dad was Army. He was on his way over to Normandy, actually, on the boat when the whole thing stopped, thankfully.
Wow.
Staff sergeant in the Army, and he was a pretty serious guy. He was, he worked out. He was a sports guy, and he played a little piano. So there was just a pretty full-on heavy, if not sometimes angry, management about the household. I mean, never crazy, but to the point of, let's just say, he was hard on me, and I was, it was tough. It was tough sometimes, both in sports and in music. But the funny thing was when when I was like 6 or 7 in that area, years old, I really wanted to be a guitar player. I was like into the Monkees, Michael Nesmith, and and I'm a car guy, so the Monkey's car was a '66 GTO that was done up into this crazy monkey mobile, right?
So you've always been a car guy since you were a teenager.
Oh man, you have no idea. So yeah, the family was into it. It was a GTO family actually, but
Nice.
There was 4 of them in the family at one time when I was a kid. Yeah, so I come by it fairly honestly, but. The music thing, once I discovered that I didn't want to play guitar, and that I don't really remember, kind of the transition or the reason or how. I just know that at the time, my next door neighbor had 2 guys. One was close to my age, a little older, and they were brothers, and actually 3, and they had a little garage band. And everybody in the neighborhood, it was like a competing garage band type of thing. So it was kind of cool. And, so the guy, I would hang out with these guys and he would show me some stuff. And I just started getting boxes and putting me on the bed and stealing my mother's pan lids, which didn't go over so well. So my dad got me this cheap little 3-piece kit, put it in his little TV workroom that he did on the side hustle gig. And I just started playing the rock records, and for some reason, I don't know, it kind of came easy. I could listen and emulate and kind of copy these beats, and just play to kind of pop rock stuff was where it started, And that was the beginning of it, and I realized I could do it, pretty well quickly, and my dad was like, not criticizing me. He wasn't giving me a bunch of trouble, and he was supporting it. And so that was kind of like, okay, this works. I'm doing this and there's approval, rather than getting smashed in sports, when I was pretty good at that too, but not great. And, I think he thought he was better than me at that. So he could constantly critique, so, but in the music, he was just like, wow, this kid's got something kind of natural and special maybe, so he just supported it, let me do it. And, there were times later when I was 12-ish, 13, I was into sports. I was playing baseball and football and girls and, and it's like my dad, and I wasn't practicing that much, like one summer, and he just said, he said, you better get to it if you're going to do this.
Yeah.
And it was the only time he kind of critiqued me. But he said, 30 minutes a day isn't enough, man. You need to if you're going to do it, he says, you're good, but you need to, you want to get better, you got to keep going. So anyway, by the time I was 14, I canceled all the sports and kind of got rid of that crowd of people and just, at about the same time, I was in the high school jazz band, Francis Howell, in Weldon Springs, which is a county of St. Charles, which is a county of St. Louis. And I got in the band, and I 75, we played Buddy Rich's West Side Story. I was 15, and the band was good. We were into it. I had, my musician friends, and, we had concert band, we had marching band, we had all this stuff. And so I won this scholarship in 75 when I was 15 to the Stan Kenton band camp at Drury College in Springfield, Missouri. And in that camp, I was expecting to go to see Peter Erskine, who was on the Fire, Fury, and Fun record, Stan Kenton. And I got there and I found out he wasn't there. I was told he just left the band like 2 weeks ago, and there was this guy, Gary Hobbs, there. And I was like, who the hell's Gary Hobbs, And I was like, oh, bummer. And then Gary started to play, and I was like, wow, this guy's really good too. So it's like, it was really cool, and he was so supportive, and, it was quite the thing. Anyway, at that camp, I met Tom Kennedy and his brother Ray. So and we found out, we didn't know each other before then, because we're different schools, different territory, basically. And once we realized we lived close enough that we could get together and play, my dad would pack up the drums, my little Gretsch kit, and go over to Tom and Ray's house, and we'd play, like for hours, And this became like a weekend event, and then Tom introduced me to Jay Oliver, and then I ended up setting up a drum set at Jay Oliver's for permanently, and we were just jamming and hanging all the time. So yeah, that's when the kind of the transition, away from the sports and into the full-time music, dedicated obsession, I would call it, started to happen.
I am so excited to announce our Patreon, the Go Collective. I wanted to make a place where you can come in and join me backstage and get closer to me and the guests. So every single week on our Patreon, we're going to be releasing after show footage with me and the guests that we will only put there. We'll also tell you in advance who the guests are, so you could submit questions for them. And if we choose your question, we'll give you a shout out on the air. We're going to have a whole chat community, so you can ask me questions, suggestions about the show. We're also going to do monthly Zoom hangouts. You can come and hang with me once a month on Zoom with other members of the community. So this is very much a collective of musicians and music fans and music lovers, all of us together, where we can talk to each other, make new friends, help educate each other, give advice, whether it's on music career, business, podcast, startup, whatever it may be. This is a great place to give you all access. So there's the backstage pass, and then there's the all access pass. Now there's only 20 all access passes, and with those, you get free entry into the Jam Jam. Only there can you do that. And we're going to do these quarterly, very intimate roundtables with guests as well, only there. So we would love to invite you to be a founding member of the Go Collective. And right now, if you sign up, we're doing discounted prices. So if you go to our Patreon, patreon.com/gowithelmo, you will see the discounted prices, and you can join the community now, because we are going to make these more expensive in the future. So I'm excited to dive deeper with you via the Go Collective. Much love, and we'll see you on Patreon. So Jay Oliver was in your life at a young age.
Yeah, from 15, 16. Yeah.
As a teenager, you had very talented young people with your young, talented self. That must have pushed your drive.
Well, the school system here, the school systems, the band competitions, both marching, not so much concert bands, but the marching bands and the jazz bands. It was full on, man. We would go to these competitions, and between my band, my school, Francis Hall, and Jay's, which I think was Parkway something West or Central, I don't remember, who had a great drummer, Kevin Giannino, who is a St. Louis local guy as well, another great player, that he's still here. So it's kind of like the nucleus. Like Bill Lenahan is another wonderful, incredible musician that spends time teaching in Italy, but he's here. Bill, Jay, Tommy's not here anymore. He's in New York, but we fly him in all the time to do stuff. That kind of nucleus of, the guys that we played with, the biggest percentage of them are still kind of, for some reason, they're either they stayed or they came back or whatever the case. And it's kind of, we're just in this place right now where we're all heroes, and we get together again and do stuff. And we have our friends, the Silverman Brothers, also, who are a drummer and a keyboard player that are, they're so important for this city. They're great musicians, but they really give back. They help out a lot with festivals and free concerts, and just promoting the music. And they're very good to us. So we do stuff together all the time. So it's really a nice hang. But the point was that back then, the high school thing. That was like a good portion of the incentive, to study and to practice and rehearse and to do these competitions. And I ended up winning like the NAJE, National Association of Jazz Educators. I ended up winning them the next 2 years as well, and went back to the camp again, the Canton camp. And by the third year, I had gotten into the first band, which was Hank Levy's band, and that was a trip. But I met a lot of people there that have somehow come back into my life too, even from those days that I didn't know. It was one in particular is a student of mine that I didn't know him back then, but the way he tells the story is, yeah, I was in the #1 band until this kid from St. Charles came in and blew me out of the seat. And it's kind of funny because he's kind of now my student again. You know, I do a consulting thing with him once a year, and so that was kind of neat. But yeah, the environment, you know, in the Midwest. You know, I mean, quite honestly, man, there just wasn't a lot else to do if you weren't into sports. You know, I mean, you know. Let's face it, man. I grew up. Maybe not you. You're young. But I grew up, you know, before the digital age. I grew up before anything. You know, it was records, man.
Yeah.
You had to listen. It was, you know, records, and then these things called cassettes came, which was, oh man, portable. We can, you know, cassettes in the car. Holy crap. You know. Then the CDs came, and then, you know, I'm not quite sure of the time period there or the timeline between, you know, VHS tapes started to appear, you know, because before that in the early 80s or whenever it was, you know, you had to go see people live or on TV maybe, you know.
Yeah.
There just wasn't the access, and so it was really it was difficult to understand what it actually was to be able to see it, right? So you had to listen. That's the only way we had to learn, we're able to learn. And I always tell my students now, either in my school or when I teach privately, I said, look, you know, YouTube is fantastic. You know, it's like, it's just there to see everything, right? You know, past, present, you know, and it's incredible. I said, do this. When you listen to something, when you find something, you find someone that you like, you want to listen to it. Turn the screen off and play it 5 times at least before you look at it. And close your eyes, and you got to go in with the ears, with the senses, and go in and listen to what they're doing. Go in, you know, first time you listen to the you know, the kick and the snare, you know, what the actual sound, the dynamic, the touch, what's going on, how's the integration of the hi-hat, the cymbals, the tom-tom, what's going on? Listening only, you know. And I still contend that you know, that was a big part of, you know, our development, people that, you know, grew up before all this visual, you know, sense stuff. It was a big part of really understanding sonically, and which kind of translated into the touch, you know, of how to make those sounds musically. And then we would put it together when, you know, when Buddy Rich or Maynard with ERSKINE, or, you know, Stan Kenton or whoever would come to town. While I'm talking about St. Louis, and, you know, when I was still here. So that was an early part of development, you know, but I never got close enough to any of those guys, you know. But when I moved to New York in '79, when I was 19, that's the first time I got to go see all the New York guys that I was listening to, you know, Steve Jordan, of course, ERSKINE as a big one. Peter was a big one, because Peter would play a lot with Jocko, and he would do a bunch of special things, and I was such a, you know, a big fan, and just loved Peter's playing, you know, from when I discovered him with Stan Kenton. But then I started to listen to everything that he was coming out on. There was a bunch of records that he was coming out on, and I just loved his playing, and still do. I mean, he's just one of my favorite players.
Yes.
And I love him. And yeah, so I would go and hang. I'd go to 7th Avenue South. I'd go to McKell's, wherever these guys were playing, and I would just hang out. I went to see Steve Gadd finally, and that was a life. All those were life-changing moments. But of course, Gadd was. Yeah, I mean, Gadd kind of was sitting in this, on this pedestal, where, all of us were, well, me in particular, I was just like, man, it just struck a chord, listening to him play on all the Chick records and anything that had come out previous. And then I got to see him, and I recorded the show, actually, and I still have it. I have it on my phone, actually. I digitized it with steps. And I made a CD for him, and I made a CD for Randy Brecker, too, because Michael wasn't around anymore by the time I got it digitized, but unfortunately. One of the most astounding performances ever of all those guys, And I remember playing it for Steve in a Japanese hotel in Japan, 10 years ago, probably. And he was listening to it. I was like, yeah. Man, we played a lot of notes, didn't we? It was really funny, But I was like, Steve, you have no idea, dude, how important, that era, and your playing, and just was for me and millions of other drummers, And yeah, so anyway, I kind of lost track of where we're going with that, with all this discussion, but that's kind of. Yeah, that's kind of the path so far, through through the high school, bands, and then figuring out through my high school connections. And actually, it was kind of funny because it was at the Stan Kenton. That's what I want to say before, and I forgot. At the Stan Kenton band camps is where I met Neil Slater, and Neil Slater was the piano player that was there doing some clinics, classes, and teaching. And then so when I came back my senior year, the guy that was coming in, Bert something, I can't remember his name too, unfortunately, but he said, "Hey man, Slater," because I was either thinking of going to North Texas, Berkeley, but I really wanted to go someplace near New York. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be where the action was happening, where all my favorite players were playing, and he said, well, University of Bridgeport in Connecticut is an hour from the city, and Neil Slater, who is teaching there, and he said, send a tape, send a cassette of your playing, and so I did. I sent a tape, and I got the message back that he goes, well, if you can read as good as you can play, you're probably going to be in the first band at Bridgeport. So that was the beginning of that. Yeah, so I kind of came in and displaced my good friend Joe Rosenblatt when I went to Bridgeport, and he thanks me to this day, but because it kind of kicked him in the butt to get a little more serious with it, and
sure.
Of course we know Joel's a fantastic player, so.
Oh yeah.
So we shared the chair in Bridgeport, and we made some records with that band. We did some tours. There wasn't necessarily the competition thing, but but the jazz band, Neil would invite all these great players to come in, Jerry Mulligan, Lou Soloff, so like the list was endless of people that came in to play with the band, and so it was cool. I mean, I just a lot of my upbringing and a lot of what I was doing was based around big bands. It was really kind of coming out of that thing. And it was funny. I was just doing this jazz cruise like in February, right, this year, 2025, and Eric Marienthal got me on the show to play with Lee Ritenour and Bob James and Marcus Miller.
Great ensemble.
And one of the other things I got to do was play with the David Sanborn tribute, because David was supposed to be in the band, and of course we know he unfortunately passed as well last year. So I'm playing, and you know, there's all of us were. It was such a great hang. Everybody was hanging, and just, you know, really nice people to be around, you know. And I remember Candy Dulfer, great saxophone player. She was backstage watching when I was playing, and she come up to me afterwards and she said, you know, it's amazing. She said, it's so cool. It says, a lot of your fills sound like a big band. And it kind of took me back. I was like, really? Then I started to think about it, and I was like, you know, she's kind of right. You know, even like in a funkier fusion setting, or, you know, because we were playing Run for Cover, we were playing, and I forget the name of the other tunes, but and Run for Cover I actually posted online. But she was correct, and I realized she was correct in the sense that that's where a lot of my musical choices come from, you know, coming out of the big band aspect of setting up a band, keeping the fills going, you know, that type of thing.
So you're going to college in Connecticut and then going to the New York, where you were living in Connecticut or New York at that time?
Yeah, so I moved to Bridgeport on campus, and that's when that whole, I didn't stay long. I was only full-time, I think, for one semester or two, because I started touring. I actually started going out of the country with a trombone player, friend named Sonny Costanzo from Connecticut. And this guy, he was a teacher at another college up there, and I would play with his band. I started getting called to do his band. And then he called me and he says, hey, I'm going to Czechoslovakia. I'm going to Prague to play with my friend, Laco Deci, right? And Laco is a character, man. He's a piece of work. Fantastic trumpet player. Love the guy. Anyway, I was 20, and, you know, so Sonny and his partner and me, and we went over there, and, you know, we're talking Prague is, you know, it's still communist country, so it was serious red tape to get into the country, and we stayed with the family, with Laco's family in Prague, and then we played at this club, and I was playing, man, the drum set was like this old Ludwig, you know, beaten up, you know, no head on the front bass drum, and like, it was, you know, long before the days of, you know, well, let's see, can I get this drum kit and these cymbals? It's like, man, it was dues. I think I brought my cymbals, but it was rough. It was really rough. But man, it was like we were the Beatles, you know. It's like, oh, there's these two American jazz musicians, you know, and TV cameras were there. It was like a scene in this jazz club, right? When we were setting up and rehearsing, and lines around the block, man. It was like serious, you know. It was really, really profoundly impressive. I was just blown out, because in the States, you know, it's like, okay, we have shows, you know, we have rock shows and fans and people go nuts for stuff, but a 5-piece jazz group, and it's like, you know, it kind of took me back, you know. It was like, man, this is something. And I came to learn it was, you know, back then in that country, and it was so oppressive that anything having to do with the arts or music was held at the highest esteem of that's the place everybody, you know, could escape. They could go and really enjoy something. And I mean, even today, I mean, that's what music's about, right? The enjoyment, the positive distraction, if you will. But I learned it at a very early age. It was so profound that I came back to New York or Connecticut, and it really hit me, you know, just that the people, at the time I was like, you know, people in this country just take so much for granted. They have no idea how good they have it, you know, because these people have nothing over there, man. It's like tough. No food on the shelves. We were drinking, you had the choice of either drinking Fanta or beer for breakfast. I mean, coffee Forget it.
Wow.
I'd stay. The guy gave me a Czech coffee, and I wasn't really even drinking coffee yet. And he gave me this thing, and a plastic cup. We were rehearsing. I don't even know how he made it, but it was homemade, right? In a cup. And he gives me the cup, and he goes, "You want sugar?" I said, "I guess. I don't know." So he put sugar in. He put a wood little stick in there. He was stirring it, and the stick was like this. The stick stood up in the coffee. And I'm like, okay. And I took a sip.
What is
of it.
this?
It was like black quicksand. It was
Yeah.
like terrible, awful. Like, God, it was horrible. But that's what I mean. It was kind of like the people there took, they made the most out of very small things that were, living life, So
Yeah.
it was a very profound lesson at an early age.
Absolutely. And it showed you what it's like to play a club with a line waiting to see you and to get that feeling with playing in front of an audience.
I was used to playing in front of audiences, because we would do jazz band concerts. Trying to think of what might have happened before then, and certainly local shows. I hadn't gotten into the scene yet, but we were doing shows with the band that kind of formed out of college and local guys which has gotten some notoriety and understanding of what it was, called Nite Sprite. And Nite Sprite spelled like Nite Sprite, the song from Chick. And so, we were playing a lot of great shows, and so I was used to playing in front of audiences. I just wasn't used to the fanfare about it. You know what I mean? It was just the TV cameras and the news and the interviews, and it was deep. It was like wow, this is really cool. But at the same time, it was like, I don't understand why is, But then as I spent time in the country and we went back the next consecutive couple of years, I understood that it was just like I said, a very oppressive situation where there just wasn't a lot of freedom. So the music gave the ability to really be free to enjoy, and thankfully they let it happen back then.
So then Nite Sprite becomes a thing at what point?
Nite became a thing kind of very quickly in college. I can't remember the first time, but it was kind of a bunch of Westchester guys, because Paul Adamy, the bass player that was in the band, the Bridgeport big band, right, in the school. I don't even know if Paul was going to school. I think he just played in a band, but he was there, so we met there. And then Andy Block was a guitar player, and Brendan O'Keefe at the time was the keyboard player. So, and Fred Vigdor, who was playing sax in the big band at Bridgeport. So I just don't remember how it all happened, but I think Paul kind of asked me and Fred to join the band or whatever. Anyway, we all got together and became that unit, Nite Sprite. And then fast forward a little bit, the band stayed together. We got a couple of different singers, writing original material. We replaced Brendan with Jay Oliver. He moved up in '81, and Joe Bonadilla was playing percussion. He was another great drummer and percussionist, and we were doing a lot of stuff, and we were getting gigs. We were starting to get good gigs in New York City, because we had always played the clubs in Westchester County, Connecticut, But we started to work at, we got one gig at 7th Avenue South, which is where I first saw Steve Gadd, right? So that in itself was a very special moment. It was the Brecker Brothers owned club down on Bleecker Street on 7th Avenue. And, we're talking 1981, and I remember Jay had this silver Dodge van packed with all the gear, drums, guitar amps, bass amps, PA speakers to a point, board. We did everything ourselves. Right?
Everything.
So this obsession with sound started a long time ago, right? So
Wow.
yeah. So and I remember it was basically Jay and I carrying all that stuff upstairs,
Wow.
and it was upstairs to get to the club. And anyway, we set up, we got it. We had an amazing gig. Andy Block was studying with Steve Kahn at the time. And Steve Kahn and Peter, they were either living in the same building or they were hanging out, friends, and I had been trying to contact and write to Peter, before that anyway. So it turns out they come to the gig, Steve Kahn and Peter Erskine. And it was because of that gig that Peter recommended me for basically the rest of my career.
That's amazing.
He thought so much of what I did to handle the music. And there's actually a DVD that we produced called Flies on the Studio Wall that was the making of the Convergence record that Jay Oliver did back in 2014. And in that video, there's a snippet of Peter, my school partner and video producer of that project, Steve Orkin. He got Peter to do an interview, and Peter talked about that night, and I had never heard him talk about that night. And it's quite cool. I mean, this DVD's available on my website if you want to check it out. But Peter, said, yeah, he goes, I just couldn't believe the way this kid was handling the music, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know if I could handle it that way. And it was just, it was just great, So anyway, like I said, he thought enough of it to recommend me for French Toast. And French Toast was a band led by a French horn player, Peter Gordon. In that band was Anthony Jackson, Michel Camillo, Sammy Figueroa, Lou Soloff, right?
Crazy ensemble. Wow.
Yeah, so it was the precursor to all of Michel Camillo's gigs and bands and work, right? So, so I got called. I got called to do the gig, and I was like, okay. And the guys said, look, we're doing a gig at this club in New York, blah, 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 whatever it was. And Steve Ferrone's playing. So why don't you come down and, you can check it out. Well, I, of course, brought a recorder. I recorded the gig.
Steve Ferrone was playing in French Toast.
Yes, Steve Ferrone, because
Wow.
Peter and Steve were sharing the chair at the time.
So you must have been honored to get that call.
Well, I mean, it was just like, yeah. I mean, of course, it was like, but I hadn't gotten the gig yet. I had just gotten the call to check it out, and they were going to check me out, in a rehearsal. So it was kind of still, in the testing of the waters, so to speak. So I record it, I get the charts, and we have the first rehearsal. And I remember, I did pretty good with the rehearsal. I had studied the music, I had studied the tape, I knew what it was, but I had a lot of questions, and I was asking Michel. I remember sitting down with him and just asking him about the parts, the percussion parts of the different grooves and like what, because he was writing a lot of the music at the time. And he was nice enough to sit down with me and tell me, for this certain groove, this is an island groove, merengue, whatever it was. This is the parts. This is what this guy plays. For the salsa stuff, here's the conga part, or whatever. He was writing all these parts down. And I just took it all home, and I figured out how to kind of put it on the drum set. And so that was, like, Michel was really my first teacher, actually, you could say, about authentic Latin, feels and grooves. And so I did a lot of shedding. And when I got the gig from the rehearsal, right, they said, yeah, cool. But it was on a, rehearsal kit, rehearsal studio. So, we're not going for it, right? So we get to the gig, McKell's, 96 in Columbus, right? And Anthony shows up with a Serwin Vega PA speaker for a bass cabinet. He was as nuts as I was about the stuff. But I showed up with a rack about this big. It had noise gates and a reverb unit in it. And then I had a board on top of that. And I had my own mics. No overheads, just drum mics, you know. And then I had a power amp, and I showed up with this big 18-inch speaker that I put on the floor next to Anthony. And the first gig, Anthony was screaming. He turned around and he said, "Oh my God, I've never heard anything like that. What is that?" You know, and it was just my dream of, you know, wanting to do what at that moment I was doing, which was bringing live drum sound to a club that sounded as good as everything else. Because I was so tired of going to the clubs and hearing these great drummers with everybody, you know, stereo guitar speakers, big bass cabinets, everybody's mic, you know, and the drums just sounding like cardboard. I don't care what drums they were, you know, because they weren't mic'd. And there was just, you know, it was like trying to do old school where the drums were concerned, you know, sonically, versus all this, you know, production going on with the rest of the instruments. It just didn't make any sense to me at all. And I said, well, obviously this is a pain in the ass. Nobody wants to carry all this stuff, right? I decided to go through it. Like I said, I was trained from a very early age. Jay and I and the rest of us, we just did the work that was necessary. Wow. We did the physical input, you know, and dragged the shit up and down the stairs and did it.
That is crazy. The drive, the determination, how much you care on making sure the sound is as great as possible, and the work that you're willing to put in to execute that.
I mean, look, what else are you going to do? It's like, you know, my mother, that's one thing, you know, I think my mother probably said it to me first, you know, if you're going to do anything, do it right. I mean, do it, if it's worth doing, do it right, you know. The work ethic, yes, it's always been, it still is. I mean, I'm just, you know, I'm sure I could be classified as a workaholic because I just enjoy it. I don't look at it like work. It's what I do, and I love what I do. You know, but that moment, I knew what it was going to be. I knew, you know, because I was demoing this with other groups. French Toast and that whole thing was first. That was the first big, you know, transition from club dates, wedding bands, you know, into the scene with the guys, you know. So I'm indebted to, you know, Peter forever, for the rest of my life, you know, because he really gave me the chance. I mean, you know, but the point is that, you know, I tell the students, you know, it's like you never know who's going to be in the audience, you know. Mm-hmm. So every time you play, you got to play like it's you're doing an audition, because you don't know, you know. Yes, you want to have a good time, but I was always serious about it. I was just like, as far as I'm concerned, we're making a record. You know, this is it. Mm-hmm. I gotta be on top of my game. You know, I can't be, you know, bringing any personal things to the stage. You know, if there's issues in my life, whatever, I'm not going to be drinking, drug, none of that stuff. I got to be clear of mind, you know, and it's kind of, you know, like I said, it's kind of that Army sports mentality. It's like, you know, we are athletes playing this instrument, and you have to train as such if you really want to be on top of your game. And I'm not saying you have to play that way. I'm just saying that when you're in somewhat decent physical condition and you're taking care of yourself, and you know, with diet and movement and exercise, it's like this becomes a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Everything becomes a lot easier, you know, and it's just it's a clearer focus, you know. But man, where that whole sound thing was concerned, it was a moment, and it was just great. It was just great. So to this day, I mean, I still, you know, I mean, back then it was carrying a car full of stuff. You know, now I have my little QSC mixer and touch mix.
Yeah.
You know,
it's consolidated.
1 or 2 powered speakers, done. You know, everything is in the little mixer. It's just super easy, you know. But I still do it. Every gig, I just, you know, I want my drums to have a fidelity, sonically pleasing quality on the stage. Not loud. It's not about the volume. It's about the fidelity. You know, it's about the beef of the quality of the sound. And I became known for that right away. You know, I was like, this crazy kid's carrying this shit around. It's like, it sounds like a record. You know, and of course I had the Yamaha, you know, the recording custom kit, and, you know, it's like I had either pinstripes or emperors on there, and had everything mic'd and gated, and it's like, it sounded like God. It was just like crazy good.
How could you afford that back then? Were you just putting all of everything you had into your gear?
Well, it wasn't, you know, I mean, it wasn't that much stuff. I mean, you know, 57s were cheap. I probably borrowed something, and like I said, I think I may have had the four, 1, 2, 3, 4 mics, basically. No, 5 mics. Kick, snare, left tom, because I was doing a left tom back then already. Left tom, one between the 2 racks and a floor tom, and so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mics, you know. And I was making enough money. Like I told you, I was working, you know, I was working, I was teaching, I was doing whatever I could do to make money. And yes, I would save the money to put it into the gear.
You have the chops, you have the sound, you have the musicality. You're like this full package at a young age. So French Toast sees you, Anthony Jackson sees you. He's screaming at how excited you're making him, how alive you're making him in that musical moment. That's the best gift you can give a fellow musician or an audience. It's amazing how in you went and how dedicated and determined you are to presenting yourself in the best way possible.
Well, look, for me, the reason I play music is for the emotional aspect of it, you know, because it turned me on, made me feel so good to listen to music that I liked, that struck a chord, that just was a positive thing in my world, you know. And I wanted to understand how to do that for myself, to be able to play at a level that I actually liked what I heard, to be able to play with other people to make them feel good, and then to make the listener hopefully dig it, you know, appreciate it. And it's still the method of operation today. It's the whole purpose, you know, of I mean, I'm still, you know, I mean, nowadays, you know, at this age, at this time in the career, after, you know, this is like I've been playing something like, I don't know, 57 years or something, you know, I've been playing this instrument. You know, and I still practice. I mean, I still sit down to make sure, if anything else, that I can maintain what I have going. I have to maintain the familiarity of being able to play, of being able to have these things in the hand, and so they don't feel, you know, strange.
Yeah.
It's a muscle training when you're developing, and then it's muscle memory, and then it's also just maintenance, you know. And then certain aspects of age are of course going to play a role, but of you know, things going on a downward slope, and that's just life. It's the way it works. But I'm not prepared to let that go anytime soon. You know, I'm just in a position where I just want to keep everything going on a level that I'm happy with, and that means I gotta touch this instrument pretty much every day still.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, a lot of my work now is trying to engineer stuff, and I do a lot of my own stuff, but I'm working for other people, you know, doing editing and mixing, and I'm in there sometimes 8 hours, and it's like, oh wait, I'm a drummer, I gotta go practice for a minute, you know, I gotta not practice. Here's the thing, Greg Bissonette, my buddy Greg, we did a clinic together in Mexico earlier this year, I think, and he actually texted me later. And he said, dude, he said, I need you to know that you made a big difference in my life at the Mexico thing. I'm like, okay. He said, we set up in this little room, right? And the organizer and him were going to go to a store to get some fruit, water, whatever, you know. And Greg was like, dude, you want to come? And I was like, nah, I'm just going to stay back and play a little bit, you know. And Greg said, you didn't use the word practice. You used the word play. Mm. And he said that was very profound for me because he said, you know, instead of thinking of like having to go to the room to practice, you know, I'm going to go to the room and just play. And I realized that that's what I do all the time, is that I will go to play the drums. And at the same time, of course, I fall into things that I find I need to practice, or, you know, or I'll try to do some independence thing, you know, that I haven't tried to do before, and just for fun, you know, to put it together. And it hit me. Now since Greg told me that, I've been telling everybody at clinics and my students too the same thing. It's like, you got to play the instrument. Just play, and don't worry about the practice things. Of course, you got to do that too, but it's the playing of the instrument that we want to do. It's the making of the music, right? The developing the flow. And you don't really practice that. You get that from playing, you know. And the more that you can do it with musicians, of course, is great. But it's like you got to own your own zone first, you know. And that means you got to play a lot. You have to play the instrument. And when you run across things that maybe aren't even, or, you know, something's, you know, not working, it's like the way you quite want it to, then you choose, you know, the theme of the playing, which becomes the practice, you know. So the theme is, okay, hand and foot combination things, right? You know, for some reason, my bass drum and my snare drum and my hi-hat, when I'm playing this little groove, are not even, you know. So you sit down and you actually, you know, if I may, for 1 second, you make that the theme of just evenness with subdivisions, right? So you're playing, and you're using the theme of evenness, right, between the subdivisions in a linear manner, but you're still playing, you know. Mm-hmm. You speed that up and you put it around the drums, you know, so it becomes a theme within playing, which in turn you're practicing at the same mm-hmm. time. But it's kind of a mindset, you know. It's not to say that you don't have to practice, because a lot of this has to do, of course, with the level that you're at and your journey, you know, and where you are. It's like, you know, after 57 years, I don't need to sit down and practice, you know, paradiddles. Although I still do. I'll play my singles, my doubles, my paradiddles, just to keep the chops working, right? But it's the playing. It's the playing of the music. It's the playing of, you know, the grooves, the feels, you know, and of course with players is the reason I do it, is to make music, to have a relationship with different people in the sense of making music with them, you know. And it's fascinating, you know, and it's something that in my kind of music that we still tour and we still play with, that we still play out on tour, which is mostly coming from a jazz, fusion, whatever you want to call it, sometimes vocals, sometimes instrumental, whatever it might be. There's a relationship on stage, and we're still using amplifiers. There's no fiberglass, you know, plexiglass around the drum set. It's like we're all listening to each other. We're all playing. We have to be responsible for the dynamics. We have to be responsible to play and blend on stage before the sound guy ever turns on a mic, you know. And I think that's lost these days, you know, a lot. I just think that, you know, everybody stuffs in the in-ears and there's no monitors on, and there's nothing on stage. Everybody's playing like they're in the studio.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. It's cleaner sound, absolutely. I don't know. You know, for me, it's not as, it's somehow not as real. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But anyway, there, you know, there's of course positives to that. But I just think that, you know, the whole essence of like really playing with somebody and blending with somebody is, you know, those days are a little different now. It's a little bit of a different process.
I love phrasing it as playing because, and also touching your drums. Cause I, for the first time ever, fell off my drum regiment when COVID hit, because I always wanted to play with people. And then when COVID came, there's no people around. And then I stopped playing. And that was my first time ever stopping playing drums every single day. And getting it going again was really difficult. And I think just simply thinking, I just need to touch these drums every day and making it so I touch it. And then I realize how much fun I have in doing it. And then the playing comes in, and that's helped me a lot to get back on it. Thank God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that you're still practicing and still passionate about it, and still keeping your skills. I mean, still growing your skills and maintenance and everything that you're putting in the work still.
What else am I going to do? You know, it's like, it's not a job. You know, this is my life. I mean, this is what whether I was put here to do it or not, I don't have much to say about that, but I just know that it's what makes me happy. It's what facilitates survival for family. You know what I mean? It's like it's a necessity. At the same time that it's a necessity in the sense of the soul, the spiritual aspect of, God, man, if I don't do this, it's just like something ain't working. Something's not right, you know. And I have to be in the music, whether it's playing, recording, you know, touring, or mixing, you know, putting together video editing. Now I'm starting to try to get into be better at the production side, you know, and that's as much of a joy for me as playing sometimes, because it's the presentation of the art, you know, and so that it's all, you know, that it creates a positive lifestyle. It creates a positive living, you know. And it, you know, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's easy to go dark, man. Any of us can go down that slippery slope of being bummed out, depressed, not happy, and it's like, yeah, you're in control of all of that. So it's hard, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and say it never happens to me, because I just recognize when it's starting to happen to me a little bit sooner and better now than I used to. But yeah, man, motivation, self-motivation, you know, listening, that's what I mean. It's like you get bummed out about something, go listen to what turned you on in the first place. Go back, go dive into something new, that's what I mean. YouTube, man, it's just a plethora of musical experience, past and present, you know, and it's a great thing. And also, you know, of course there's survival. We have to make money. So that's another discussion. I mean, you know, I always tell students too, it's like, look, you can't beat yourself up that, you know, that if you're not able to really survive at a comfortable level playing music, then you have to think outside the box. You have to expand, do something else, maybe within the business. Learn how to film edit. Learn how to do something that you're touching the business. I mean, if I had to just survive being a drummer, it wouldn't be as comfortable. Absolutely not. It's like there's different sources of income within the industry. I haven't had the wherewithal or the time to go outside it, like with, you know, real estate investment or any of that type of things. I know a lot of friends that do that, and, you know, and that is a survival way you know, a mechanism, a way of doing things to play the game as it is that is survival, because we have to do it in a financial world, right?
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of different ways to look at that, but for me, I do it in a way of, you know, creating as much passive income as possible, and at the same time working hard. Work hard. It's like I just work, you know, and I'm thinking about how to work and to make the next dollar, you know.
Absolutely.
It has to be part of the process. It can't be the determining factor that puts you here. But at the same time, you got to think about it, you know. And I always have. I've always thought about trying to be smart, you know, with the money. But it's I just know that if I take care of this, and if I take care of this and this, the rest of it comes a little bit easier.
The variables that you can control.
But the more that you're in a place that you control, you know, what you can control, I found anyway, it's whether you want to say the universe gives it back, whatever you want to say, you know, it creates a positive aura, it creates a positive flow that usually comes back.
So you said drumming makes you happy, and your drumming makes all of us happy. And so we thank you for it. And on top of that, of course, it made Anthony Jackson happy. So now Anthony Jackson is loving your drumming. He starts recommending you for whenever he's getting asked for a drummer. And that leads to you getting the Simon and Garfunkel Reunion Tour.
That's correct.
And so at that point, you're 23 years old.
That is also correct.
So yeah, so everything that we've already talked about is all in your early 20s. You're already there. 23 now, you do the Simon and Garfunkel Reunion Tour. So now you're playing in front of huge crowds. That's a whole other world, right? And that must have opened up the floodgates for you. It
was really the French Toast gig in playing with those guys, and in particular, Anthony. He just started to recommend me for everything, and I'm sure some of the other guys had something to do with it too that were in the studios, because I started to get called to do studio work. I started to get called to play with different people live, and I remember that I was playing with Ronnie Cuber at the same club, 7th Avenue South, right? And who walks in the middle of the gig but Paul Simon. Comes up the stairs, sits down 15 feet from me. I don't think I looked at it. I don't think I could. I was just like, oh, shit, it's Paul Simon. So Tom Barney was playing bass. I remember the gig. It was fun. It was a great gig at 7th Avenue. And I had my shit, my sound stuff, you know. And anyway, he stayed for 2-3 tunes maybe, got up and left. So I was like, okay. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know, you know, I was like, did he hate it? What? You know, I didn't know. So the next day I get a call. And he said, Paul really liked it. He wants you to do the tour. How much money you want? And I was like, whoa, what? And I was, you know, I had no idea. And I said, you know, actually I had talked to Anthony before that. I called him that morning and I said, look, man, I don't know what's going to happen, but you know, Paul came down. How much money should I ask for? He goes, well, I know Steve gets this and I get this, and you should just ask for this, you know, tell him you got to, you know, give up a bunch of studio dates, you know. So I threw out a number, you know, that, you know, and no hesitation. Okay, no problem. And I was like, I should have asked for a little more.
Should have gone a little higher.
A little higher.
What was market rate back then for a gig like that?
I mean, I don't know if I'm really at liberty to say. Let's just say I was making $4,500 a week, $4,500, which is not, you know, it's not huge money by any means. But in 1983, for a 23-year-old, it was, you know, I was making $13,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, and the tour was 8 weeks long. So, you know, do the math. I mean, I basically was able to buy my first house with that tour.
Yeah.
Because
what's crazy is like $4,500 a week, like, is unfortunately, still people that are headlining arenas are paying their bands that a lot of the time, still these days.
Yes. Oh, I know. Oh, I know.
Which is incredible. Like, that's horrible. 40 years later, like, it should be twice as much.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. It's, I know. It's, there's a, I'm not going to get into it because it's difficult trying to come up with your price, trying to come up with what you're worth.
Yeah.
But the downside, the other side of that is, and I tell my students this all the time too, because on any level, if you dumb down the industry by selling yourself cheap, you're screwing everybody.
Yes.
And I tell my students, it's like, look, this is what I charge this for, to do a recording. If they want video, it's this, blah, 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 blah. And my students like, well, tell them to call me if you don't want to do it, because I'll do it for $100. And I'm like, no, you won't. I said, no, you won't. I'm not. Yeah. If you're going to say that, I will not recommend you. So you have to charge. You've got to charge what you're worth, man. I mean, it's otherwise we're all screwed, because if they can get, and I mean, we're kind of, it's, with AI sampling, with all that stuff, thankfully people still want, the real feel of an instrument sometimes. And of course the name value helps. So if you get to a position where having your name on something on YouTube will pull more people in, then you're going to get called. But, and that's just marketing. That's the way it works. I mean, even for me, if I try to take a band on the road, I can't just think that my name is enough to like convince promoters to sell the show. I got to have a couple other names in there that, that want it. So it's always a thing of like, make sure you get a name or two on your band or on your record or on something that is going to help sell some units, because it's the way it's always worked, and then hopefully you become one of those names that eventually sell you, help sell you. But yeah, it's the whole, cutting the value of what we do that, and I know sometimes it's a desperate situation. It's like you want the gig, you want to play, you want to record, and you make that mistake in saying, either I'll do it for nothing or I'll do it cheap, And don't get me wrong, I've done favors. I still do favors. I do some favors for people I know, for people that maybe we exchange something, in the sense of, I'll do the performance, let me post it on my YouTube channel so that I maybe get the monetization, on the videos. There's different leverage points now. But you got to have a bottom line, And for me, it comes down to how much do I like the music? How much do I want to be involved with this because I like it, And in those situations, I've done favors and I've gone below my fee.
Right.
But but you can't just offer yourself for nothing or for really low amounts of money. It's just you're going to shoot yourself in the foot along with everybody else.
Now, at this point in your career, you're 23. You're on the Simon Garfunkel Reunion Tour. It's big. You're making your first good money, and so the opportunities start coming in more. Is that when the session era kind of started for you in New York City, or did Chick Corea come next?
The session stuff started right after French Toast. I mean, like I said, I started getting called for all this stuff. So, and then that tour happened with Paul Simon and Simon and Garfunkel. And then after that tour, yes, I was kind of like this, this new kid in town that, that played good and clean kid, showed up on time, could read, could understanding styles, so even though I was coming from more of a jazz place, but I actually started to work with guys like Nile Rodgers. I mean, I started to get called for a lot of different stuff. And I mean, man, with Nile, I worked on Diana Ross, Peebo Bryson, George Benson,
Madonna,
which was just a Rototom overdub, by the way. Tony Thompson's the drummer on most of that record on Like a Virgin.
What is the Rototom overdub? What song is that?
I don't know the name of the song. It's a 12. It's a 6/8, 12/8 thing where it's got Rototom, so you can go check it out. It's a The big one with Nile though was Robert Plant. I was actually on the Honey Drippers record with Jeff Beck. And
So cool.
That was cool.
What was that session like?
It was a Sunday morning at Atlantic Records. It was a last-minute call, and Nile had been working for me, and I was available, so I could make it. And I came in, and like I said, Jeff Beck, and Robert Plant was there, man. He was singing in the air hole, the air lock between the studio door and the control room. And, the hair was like through the window. I was freaking out. It was so funny. It was so great. And we recorded, I think it was just 2 or 3 songs that were recorded, and Rockin' at Midnight got on the record, actually. So they used the shuffle. It was just awesome. Ahmet Aragon, all the, Atlantic, big wigs were there. And
Ahmet was there?
Ahmet came, yeah.
Whoa.
Storytelling, and yeah, so, that was 1984, I think. And then, so I was doing a bunch of different things. I was doing a lot of records for, just kind of like almost direct to 2-track jazz records, GRP records, different things. And one of the things that I also put together with Tom Kennedy was with Bill Connors. And we did this record called Step It, I think. Yeah. And we played at 7th Avenue South, too, with that band. And we also played at the Bottom Line in New York. And at the Bottom Line gig is where Chick had found out about me through Michael Brecker and Tanya Maria. And he came to see me at that gig. And that was 1984. And that's when he asked me to join him and John and do this Elektric Band thing.
Whoa.
That's when it happened. That's how it happened. So that's what I mean. It's like you never know who you're playing for or what's going to happen. It's like, so you just got to be on your game all the time.
I got to double click into that Chick story. So tell me more about that night.
The backstory is that, Chick was looking for young guys for this new band. And he found John already in California. I think his wife Gail had heard John play with somebody. And so he's in New York with a night off, and he's calling everybody. Brecker, everybody's calling. And Michael, he mentioned my name, that I was kind of this new young kid that was really good. Excuse me. So later, I guess he's hanging with Tanya Maria, and Tanya Maria says, "Hey, you got to listen to this new piano player, Michel Camillo." Puts the record on, and Chick's listening, and he's like, "Yeah, piano player's great, but who's the drummer?" Second time, my name comes up right off the record. Gail just happens to be looking through the Village Voice newspaper in New York, and let's see who's playing in the clubs. Bottom Line, Tom Kennedy, Bill Connors, Dave Weckl. It's just star alignment stuff, Wow. And then I see Chick walk in the middle of the gig. I'm like, okay,
you did not know he was coming.
No.
You see Chick Corea walk in.
I saw him walk in. Yeah, I saw him walk in, and at the time I was trying to minimize my carrying, hauling equipment. So I used to play my floor tom on the same stand as a ride cymbal. And whatever happened, for whatever reason, if the stick bag was hanging on it and the leg maybe wasn't in the right place, but as soon as I saw Chick walk in, I must have hit something and the whole thing just fell over. I was like, I was like, oh man, really? It was like, somebody help me put it back up. Okay, we're playing. Yeah,
there's
and
no drum tech.
It was and I may have had somebody there helping me, but yeah, it was an embarrassing moment, but
So Chick watches you play.
Yeah, watching me play, comes backstage, and of course there's a little bit of love lost between Chick and Bill, because Bill was the original guitar player in Return to Forever. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what went down with that whole story, but as soon as Bill saw Chick come in, and he says, "Oh no," to himself, he told me later that it's going to steal my drummer, and I think Michelle had a little bit of that going on too. But yeah, he just said, he goes, man, he goes, fantastic, really loved it. What do you think about, I found a space player, I'm going to start this new band. What do you think about coming out to LA for rehearsal? I said, let me think about that for a minute. Yeah, when? I'm on the plane tomorrow. Like,
I'll go home with you right now.
Kidding me? You kidding me? Yeah, so that was it. I mean, and I think it was this, so that would have been the fall of '84, and then I think the spring of '85 is when we got together, did the first rehearsal. We did that gig at Ilario's, which is out there as a recording, actually, in San Diego, and that was it. That became the Elektric Band, which was a trio for the first year, basically,
with just you and Chick and John PATITUCCI.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so how did the Elektric Band become that thing? Was it already, when you did that trio, was it called the Elektric Band, and was that the first title of the Elektric Band? Okay.
Yes.
So that was when Chick was like, I want to make a new band. You and John PATITUCCI, and I want it to be the Elektric Band, like not just called Chick Corea.
Yeah, it was a full on plan to be called the Elektric Band, and I remember at the very beginning I was talking to Chick about, because Chick he was always a trio guy. He liked the trio, but he wanted to do it electric, and I think he had ideas of adding instrumentation later, but at that moment we were just, he was into all these new synths, and I said, Chick, this is an Electric Band thing. I said, and I may have said it before the rehearsals, because I think I had everything for these first gigs, the refrigerators as they were, with at least some version of it, with at least triggering Simmons, and maybe an octopad or something that I was triggering, a Lynn drum machine, I think, at the time.
You were already triggering it. That's crazy.
Well, it came out. I mean, actually, when I was doing the Simon and Garfunkel gig, which I just dug up a video, actually, that I got digitized. I don't know if I have permission to release any of it, but
please do.
I've got the Dodger Stadium show from that concert when I was.
I want to see it.
I was 23, and it's hysterical. But I was triggered. I had my Simmons, off to the back here, off to the side. They were going up like this, and I was playing the Simmons, So shortly after that's where I started to get into the triggering of the Simmons stuff. And that turned into Akai samplers and a bunch of different triggering things, and so he was cool with it, and I mean, man, it eventually morphed into these double refrigerators behind me with basically a PA system, and two subs and two full range Eastern acoustic speakers. I remember.
How much fun was that to play?
Oh, it was great. It was, I mean, at the time, I wasn't using phones. I was still acoustic, and I had to use little earphones. I remember using Walkman phones. Actually, at first, I had these other two little speakers on top of the racks to hear the sequences that we played for Sidewalk and Rumble. Yeah.
That's crazy. You got to really be paying attention.
Yeah. So, So yeah, that was the beginning of it, and then we did the first record, later that year, I think, and I mean, obviously it was Chick's writing that got everything started, and just his beautiful way of allowing us to be free to create. I mean, that was always the one thing that he always said was, you have to be free to create, and he was just so good at that. He was so good at finding the musicians and allowing them to be free to create within his world. Yes, sometimes he had direction, sometimes he had, ways that he wanted things done, and he certainly knew what he wanted, and, but his prolific writing, his ability to, to write the music for the band at hand. And then, on that first record, we had Carlos Rios on the guitar, and Carlos didn't want to tour with us because he was so busy in the studios and doing a lot of pop stuff at the time. And that's when we got Scott Henderson. So Scott Henderson was the first guitar player in the band, and there's a lot of footage out there of that now. And then then that turned into a different guitar player. That Chick wanted to go somewhere else with it, and we had Jamie Glazer for a minute, and then Frank Ambali, of course, became the new Electric Band guitar player. And shortly thereafter, Chick he started hearing saxophone. He wanted another melodic voice, and he wanted it to be sax. So that's when Eric Marienthal came into the picture. And that was it, man. I mean, it was just full on touring. I was still living in New York at the time, in the first 3 to 4 years of the band. And between that and doing my records, which I started doing in the late 80s with Jay. Jay was in LA at the time. So I was never home. I was on the road constantly. I was either on the road with Chick or I was in LA doing a record with Chick or doing my own records. And I said, no, I got to move, at least give me a couple more months at home, So that's when the move happened, 1990 maybe, to LA. It just, it was full on. And I remember one of the things, because we were with GRP, right? Grusin and Rosen Productions. And we were under contract. Chick was under contract to deliver records on a schedule. And we've been touring like crazy, And there was a record coming due. And Chick was like, I don't have it. And we was like, well, you got to deliver something. So go into the studio and record a jazz trio record, do something, So Chick was going to go in with Roy and Miroslav again. And then he thought to ask John and I. He says, hey, you want to go in and just record a trio record, Like, okay, let's think about that too. Yes. Yeah. So we went in and that's the record we won a Grammy for. We actually won a Grammy for the Chick Corea Acoustic Band record.
Wow, that's how Acoustic Band.
Yeah, but that record was made not with the intent to create a new band. That was delivered because he had to deliver a record under contract. So he did, and then there was so much demand for it that he had to turn it into a band. So now we were touring with 2 bands.
Oh my God.
And yeah.
At this point, are you like
burnt out? Yes.
No, not just burnt out, but are you besides that, are you like, oh man, I'm doing it. Like, this is my dream. I'm doing it.
Of course. Yes, absolutely. But towards the end of it, I'm inherently, inherently is the right word. I can be kind of a negative guy sometimes, which is, the one thing in my life that I really hate about myself, that I'm, have been trying to work on as a human, as I get older and continue the journey, and so I would always, I was always finding the negative about it, oh God, I'm so tired, blah, 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 blah. Stupid. So, but anyway, as I say, a reason for everything. It kind of pushed me to the point where I was so burnt out, and I wasn't really in a position to be able to study more, practice more, play with different people, do other things. And we're not even talking about life yet. I mean, just personal stuff. We're talking about career, right? And it just got to the point in the early 90s, 92, 93, I said, Chick, I got to go, man. I'm sorry, I love you, but I got to go. And I had to make that change. I had to go. And it was, it was an unmarrying of sorts. I hate to use a divorce word, but unmarrying, of that relationship.
Yeah, because that was 7 years, right? 7 years you guys were together.
Yeah, basically.
9 albums, a Grammy. It's a lot.
And the other thing I didn't say is that I really wanted to do my own band. I wanted to I wanted to try, to do it in a leader situation, write my own music, tour, do it the way I wanted to do it,
We're going to get to that, but I got to stick on. We got to go back to Electric Band for a second. I don't want to blow quite past it. So with Electric Band, how did you guys write music?
Most of the time, Chick was bringing in compositions.
And would you have charts for everybody, or is it structured? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, very structured, although lots of improv sections. I know John had bass lines for the most part. And of course melodies and all that stuff were written out. And I never got a drum chart ever. I always got a piano score. And sometimes on some of the records there, Chick would start to create demos. He got pretty adventurous with his synclavier as time went on and started to do demos for records. And I would take some of those ideas and incorporate them and then, suggest and add some of my own as we were recording and rehearsing. And then a couple times, like on Light Years, for example, I mean, we were involved in the composition a little bit, but for the most part, man, it was Chick's baby. I mean, it's and rightly so. I mean, it's just his compositional ability was frightening. It's just, he said one time that for Eye of the Beholder, the I forget the name of the song. That's not the name of the song. Or is it? Is it the, whatever, wow, spacing out. Anyway, that song, he said he dreamt it. He woke up from a dream and had to get up and go write it down.
Wow.
And yeah, and I think it was that record that he was writing as we were doing it,
What about Gotta Match? What's the story of that song?
The story with that song, that was obviously from the very first record, the very beginning. Yeah. At that point, we were excited about everything. I mean, John and I were kids, man. I mean, we were just like, I remember one thing about the band. We had just played the Queen Mary Jazz Festival. Miles was on it, different bands, and it was kind of one of our big debuts as a trio, as the Elektric Band. And we played the gig, and Bernie Kirsch, our sound engineer, would record everything from the board. Bernie, give me the cassettes. We're going to go to the car and check it out, after the show. So he gives us the cassette. I'm with John. John, come on, man, let's go listen to this. I got my car here, So we get in there in my little Honda Civic wagon and put it in the Alpine player, And we're listening, And we're listening. And I'm like, dude, why does it sound like Chick is burning and we're dragging? And he goes, yeah, I know, man. He's like on fire and we're like, And so we came to the realization because, both John and I, most recently when we got into the band, had both come out of R&B situations. I think John was playing with Larry Carlton and whomever, and he was doing a lot of electric, pocket music. I had just come out of doing a lot of gigs with Richard T. and Cornell Dupree and Sanborn on occasion. Who It Is was the name of that band. And Will Lee. Will Lee was playing bass. So I was concentrating more on the trying to lay back and play more pocket oriented. So we got on the band, and some of the music John and I we'd be in it for the mentality of like a rhythm section to hold the time down, And we realized really quickly we couldn't do that because the result was, as I said, Chick was burning and we were dragging. It just wasn't happening at all. So we made a decision at that point to, as Mike Stern likes to say, get up off of it and play a little bit more on top than maybe we wanted to. But if we didn't, it just didn't work, And that's one of the things that I also love about and learned from, Maestro GADD is that he can adapt to anything. So, you'd hear him with Ricky Lee Jones or Paul Simon or what have you, just, laid back, funky, beautiful pocket, right, groove. And then you'd hear him with Michelle or Chick or whoever it was, and it was like pushing forward, or it was still in time, of course, but it had an edge. That's what's called adaptation, and to not rush or drag, but to play with at the same time, you're doing the same job-oriented aspect of what we do, which is keep time. But it's the feel. It's so difficult. So I remember I used to get blasted quite a lot back in the day for my feel being on top, right? Mm. And what most people don't know about the story is this aspect, that if we didn't play on top, and sometimes Chick would ask us to as well, it just didn't work musically for him. And the one thing that I always tell my students is, make the person happy who's paying your salary. Whoever writes the check, that's who you make happy. Nobody else matters. You got to, everybody falls in line with who's ever paying a check, Yeah. It's and then you make it work. You figure it out how to make it musically enjoyable, musically, satisfying. And so that was sort of our existence in the Elektric Band, is that we except for the Light Years record and maybe a couple of other tunes, we did have to play quite a bit more on top than we would have maybe preferred at times.
It's crazy to think about you guys dragging, because of course the Elektric Band that I have seen was once you guys dialed it in, and it was so unbelievably incredible. You and PATITUCCI together are so locked. You guys are one of the greatest rhythm sections ever.
Right. Well, let me clarify. I did say that it sounded like we were dragging. I should have said that it sounded like we were just, too far in the backside of the pocket, because it's not like we were slowing. It's not like we were slowing down, for God's sakes. We couldn't do that with Chick. Forget about it.
No way.
But there, it is something to learn from, to pay attention to, that, and of course you could do metronomic study to, hopefully better your inner clock and all that type of thing. But, there is the whole essence of, some people are out there, professing, you don't need a metronome, don't practice with a metronome, which is nuts to me. Just for the fact of that, if you only, approach time from your human aspect all of the time, some of us get into habitual things, either from physical motion or just where they want the tempo to be, that's comfortable. Mm-hmm. And sometimes tempo, where maybe somebody else wants it, is not comfortable. It's not where you want to be. So, I still profess that, that practicing, learning about playing time with a metronome, and while we're talking about it, a good feeling metronome, which is why my buddy Jay's app called Groove Clicks is what I use, because it's a good feeling metronome with grooves and, pocket stuff. That whole thing of time and, developing inner clock, and then, it still comes down to the feel of it, and there, you could write books on this stuff, and some do, and, but it's the feel. And it's the feel that is agreed upon with whomever you're playing with at the time. Yeah. So it's a very, very difficult subject to talk about, or certainly to teach. Really, really hard, because a lot of it comes down to the moment of an agreed upon expression.
What was the greatest lesson Chick Corea taught you?
To basically create an environment for everybody to be free to create. That's probably the most important, because
as a leader.
Yeah, because as anything, you don't have to be a leader to do that, because the vibe that you create on stage, especially, is, you want everybody to like to play with you, Yeah. And for me, it's, I'm still working on it, to come out of my serious place of yes, trying to get the feel to happen, but also of just, concentrating. It's a concentration thing, So, some drummers can just smile all day while they're playing, it's like, I can't do that, it's like, this is serious business here, Yes, I want to have fun. Yes, I want it to feel good, but, I'm trying to work here, how am I supposed to smile, Anyway, I'm trying to work on that too, but.
It's funny to fast forward to your incredible Higher Ground cover that you did with Jay Oliver and with Chris Coleman also on drums, you and Chris Coleman doing a drum duet, which is such a powerful, amazing cover and arrangement that you guys did. But it's funny that you say that because Chris is sitting there super smiley.
That's what I mean.
I can only imagine being in your head of like, oh wait, do I smile?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Chris, I love Chris. He's a beast, man. He's just a monster, and he's such a great
one
guy.
of the greatest.
It's great. Yeah. So that project was a lot of fun.
We're going to get into your solo projects. That's what I want to talk about next. But to kind of end it on Chick. So, wow, man, you just got to have such an incredible shared life experience with him, and like it's what a blessing that must have been. Is there anything that you wish people knew about him?
There's always the Scientology cloud, which comes up all the time. And Chick was, of course it was a way of life for him, and it was saved his life back in the early day, probably. And, it was his way of operating. And the only thing he was concerned about is that we respected that we understood it, because nobody else in the band was a Scientologist or partook in that. So, for me, we all had sort of the agreement and the whole approach of like, look, man, whatever works for you, as long as it's all working, and that's basically what I told Chick. And I said, because it's not that he was trying to get us to come in. He just was curious about how we thought about it. I'm like, dude, it's like your thing, and I got my thing. That's, that I'm good,
Yeah.
And so that was that aspect of it was cool. But I think what anyone can see online of when Chick talks, is that is totally transparent. He was just always so genuinely curious, about how you felt about stuff, to discuss what was going on with things on and off the stage, and yeah, man, it's just I guess the easiest way to say it is that whatever it looks like, with him, it's how it is. It's just like totally just a beautiful guy.
Seems like he was just an incredible leader.
Yeah, well, he was, first of all, an incredible musician, but yes, he really, like I said, he understood how to give everybody their creative space, and but everybody, that's what kind of in Chick's life, in his world, created the respect, and so I think everybody, most people, were always, very happy to just make sure he was okay. I know for me, that was my main concern, was to not play too loud for the trio, especially. That was probably one of my biggest challenges ever,
Wow. So, was there a favorite show from Electric Band or Acoustic Band of yours?
Nah, I mean, man, we did so many amazing shows. I mean, of course, back in the early days, we did a show in São Paulo, Brazil. And it was an outdoor show, and it was free. It was like 80,000 people. It was like a rock concert, So that was pretty special. And then I remember a bullfighting ring in either Spain or Argentina somewhere that we played, and the power went out. And me and Eric were the only ones that could keep playing for like 20 minutes.
And you kept playing?
Oh yeah, man. We just kept.
Wow.
Are you kidding? There must have been 2,000 people there. I mean, we had to keep playing. We had to do something, So it was like, and then finally the power came back on. So it was kind of cool.
It's so crazy, man. This is like, playing jazz fusion in front of 80,000 people. Like, this is the peak of fusion.
There were so many great shows. I mean, we did. I mean, we toured extensively.
Yeah.
I mean, we were on tour. I mean, it was endless. I mean, spring, summer, fall, and it was usually anywhere from 5 to 10 weeks per tour at a time.
Oof. Yeah, that's a lot.
I mean, yeah, it was a lot. It was
Wow. But what a wave you got to ride. Did you realize it at the time?
yes, and then it was like I said, I just for whatever stupid reason, I just got so into my own unhappiness of looking over there and not completely digging into the moment, which was my bad, completely. So but I mean, there is such a thing as, like I said, as just burnt out. I mean, man, and not to mention, I mean, I'm dealing with, some injury stuff in my hand that is due to, all those years of really hard, stressful touring and playing, and some other stupid stuff that I've done, like slamming my thumb in a door 6 years ago didn't help. But thankfully, the way that I play with this being kind of loose up here doesn't really. I'm still pretty much okay. But
thank God, yeah. So that was it. You were burnt out. You were kind of ready for the next thing. You wanted to do your solo albums, and so you left Chick.
Yeah, but a lot of it was just to get off of such a heavy road schedule and to go back into study. And that's when I had talked to Steve Smith a lot, because I noticed that he was just, in that period, he was just growing exponentially. I mean, he was just getting so much better. I'm like, Steve, what the hell are you doing? He goes, dude, you got to go see Freddie Gruber. I said, okay.
It's crazy to think about you, because I think, like, just as a fan watching you play, I'm like, wow, Dave sounds incredible. Like you're crushing it in that moment. And for you to be like, I need to get to the next level. Like that's where you are in your head. You're like, I need to go study more. I need to go to Freddie Gruber.
Yeah, I was not happy. I really wanted to, because I was working very hard. It's not that I couldn't play. I mean, I was still obviously probably hit 10,000 hours of study in my mid 20s latest, I mean, it was playing,
wild.
So, but I was working too hard. I was hurting, I wasn't happy with, and I just wanted to grow. I wanted to grow. It was a need, it was a necessity. And I wanted to play with other people, which is, so I was able to do some more stuff with Michelle Camillo. Did the Brecker Brothers a little bit. And then it's through the Brecker Brothers is where I kind of got hooked up with Stern. Even though I played on his first record, Upside Downside, back in the day, and that was also '84.
Working with Mike Stern, let's jump to that, because I guess that is before your solo records. And I would love to dive into that a bit. Like, right. What was that like working with Mike Stern? Because those projects were all incredible. All the tracks you guys did together.
Mike is just so great. I mean, he's another wonderful human being, man. He's such a great cat. I love him. And we had a lot of the, same sensibilities of time and all that stuff. And we had some great moments, man. When we started working together, we did a lot of stuff with Jeff Andrews, the late great bass player Jeff Andrews, and there's some video of that out there too. Jeff was just, man, God, this day, I was like, nobody plays changes on the bass like Jeff Andrews did, man. It was just incredible. So those were the early days, and then we did some stuff with Lincoln Goines, and the sax chair was always revolving with Bob Malik, and Bob Shepard did some gigs. We did some gigs with the late great Dave Carpenter, bass player. It just went, the band really cycled through quite a lot of different players, and then of course Tom, my brother from another mother, Tom Kennedy. Yeah. We started to do a lot of stuff together with Mike. But back in the day, before my band, because it was kind of like two periods with Mike.
Absolutely.
It was that early period, from '94 to '98, basically. Because once '98, '99 came around, based off the Rhythm of the Soul record, I started doing my own thing. But with Stern, we did a bunch of touring, man. We did a couple of records with Mike, and those were also some tough tours. I mean, touring, a jazz tour, whether it be, back then we used to be able to, getting like a tour bus, especially in Europe, was more affordable than it is now.
Yeah.
And those were with Chick and with Stern too, and actually with my own band. Actually, we did it as well. That's out of sight now. You can't even think about it, man, unless you're on some major stadium tour. So yeah, we'd be sleeping on the bus. We'd be, man, it was like, oh man, it's such a glamorous lifestyle. Yeah, okay. You got to work out just so you can travel. Never mind the playing. It's like you got to be in shape just to deal with all that stress, man. Wow.
Well, yeah, you're not playing normal gigs. You're like all the gigs that you're on, you're playing incredibly proficient, high energy music, so many notes, like the mental game versus the physical game. It's a lot more than just playing a normal gig.
Yeah. Well, with Mike, with Mike and his music, especially in a trio situation, man, it's a demanding gig for a drummer. I mean, you're playing a lot of, up-tempo jazz. There's a lot of drum solos. There was a lot of playing going on. But always enjoyable. We had such a great chemistry, and we haven't played together in a while now, but hopefully we get to do some more stuff. But yeah, it was that period that was really, really fun, really cool.
So in 1990, you dropped Master Plan, your debut solo album. And I've heard you say in previous interviews that you called it Master Plan because it was all part of your master plan that you had. But what exactly was that master plan?
The master plan was because, GRP basically was signing everybody back in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. And after Chick got the deal with GRP, with the Elektric Band, they almost immediately signed John, and Eric was next. And maybe even Frank. I don't remember if he was with GRP too, but I guess he was for a minute. And they asked me. They asked me right at the same time they asked John, and I said no. I said, I'm not gonna do that until I feel I have a market to do it for. Yeah. So I really, since the time that I was in my teens, I was a teenager, and I'm listening to all these guys, and I'm just like, where's the instructional stuff, man? Where's the cool play-alongs from these guys? Why is nobody producing this stuff? So I wanted to do Contemporary Drummer +1 since the time I was 17. And by the time I was 26, 27, it was time. And so Jay and I put this thing together that we basically approached like doing a record as far as the sound quality and what it was. But I wanted to make, to that date, the most comprehensive play-along book and play-along charts and transcriptions that was on the market. And so the plan was to get that project done, which we did, we completed, and get it out there. And, Rob Wallace and Paul Siegel were, so helpful in, back in the day with, getting it out there. We're still talking the period pre-digital, basically. So, I mean, there is videotapes, yes, but the audio aspect was still pretty happening. So this would have been 87, probably 88. And so it came out in cassette form at first. But anyway, that was sort of the plan. I wanted to get that out there, and I think I did Back to Basics, the video, maybe even the next step, and maybe that was later. But I think we did both the video and the audio thing, because I wanted to capture the drum market, if I could. Yeah. I wanted to put out there what was possible, maybe to put out there in the drum market, and it worked. So by 88, 89, I said, okay, I'll take the deal. They were still offering it, and so we put it together. We actually used a couple tunes from the play along on the record. Nice. And that was the master plan. That was the idea of trying to capture the audience. And I think that record sold like 80,000 copies in the first couple of years, or a year and a half or something. So it kind of worked. It kind of worked, Yeah.
And you had Steve Gadd play on one of the tracks with you. So was that part of the plan too,
Well-
to get one of your favorite drummers to duet with you?
No. Well, yes, but no, that was not the reason I did that. The reason I did that was, I wanted to recreate the vibe of the session where I first heard Steve Gadd. And that was on Chick Corea's, I think it was Mad Hatter, whichever record Humpty Dumpty is on, okay? You know, I don't know if that's a Leprechaun or Mad Hatter. I always get them confused. I think it's Mad Hatter. But anyway, I wanted to recreate that session with Anthony Jackson, Chick, and me. And Jay was there too, right? At Mad Hatter Studios, where it was recorded. And Steve. So I wanted to insert myself in there. So Chick agreed. He thought it was a great idea, and he offered to write the song, you know, for us. And that was it. We did it, and that was the outcome. I actually have some little VHS pieces of that recording too, which we've got on the shelf somewhere that we're trying to get some interviews done about it. So, but yeah, that was a special moment, of course, man. Anytime I ever got to play with and still get to play with Steve is, you know, it's still kind of a pinch me moment. I think I'm forever the student, you know.
Yes.
So it's just the way it is.
I know I can hear it when you talk about Steve and when you talk about Peter Erskine. Like you're clearly still
Peter too.
Still just admire them so much.
Yeah, without those guys, I mean, the journey would have been different. Let's put it that way. And who knows? I don't know if it would have been as good or as serious.
15 years ago, my brother moves into a house with some guys, my little brother Anthony, with some guys in Mount Washington. And he was like, hey, one of the guys I'm living with says that he's best friends with Dave Weckl. And I was like, really? Are you sure? He's probably lying. I was like, what's his name? He was like, his name's Jay. it was Jay Oliver. My brother lived with Jay Oliver.
No kidding.
For like a year. Yeah, for like a year. So I went over to the house and met Jay. It was really great. And I actually lived at the time up Mount Washington as well. So I was very close. So I could like walk to their house. But
wow, nice.
But it was great. And that was what actually made me, because I had known Master Plan and your solo albums. I was obviously a fan of that, and but I just didn't know that it was really you and Jay together, like putting all those compositions and producing and everything together. I didn't realize how big of a partner Jay has been in your musical life.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. Like I said, we when we met, we kind of knew that it was, you know, again, it was like a brother from another mother scenario. And yeah, we were inseparable until he left first, actually. He got the gig with Maynard Ferguson when he was 19. And so he kind of left town first, and then I followed after that.
Wow.
To go east. But yeah, we were, and then of course the relationship stayed together. And then in '81, he moved up with me and got in Nite Sprite, and that was that whole thing. And then that dissipated in '82. Basically, it was only a year lived, and he moved back to St. Louis to do more studio stuff and be in his studio that he still has. It's revamped now, but he's still in the same studio we recorded Master Plan, all those songs in. With Michael Brecker and Chick both in that basement, recording, and Anthony too.
Wow.
Recording stuff. So yeah, it's quite a bit of history. It's cool.
So cool.
Yeah, so Jay, then fast forward to my situation of wanting to do my own records, and of course it was with him. So but before that, even the Contemporary Drummer +1 happened with him. So I mean, every time I would come home, we'd be doing stuff together, and then he was still at home during the making of Master Plan, And then I think after that he moved to LA because we had to go about it differently for Heads Up and everything else after that. Then we were both in California at that point.
One thing I would absolutely love to talk to you about, because I don't think people really think about what goes into making your own products, like your signature lines. You have your signature snare drums, you have your signature sticks, your cymbals, the Evolution line, and the Legacy line. But I would love to at first ask you about your sticks. Like, what goes into developing your Vic Firth signature sticks? How do you do that, and how long does it take to get it right? Because I mean, your stick, I believe, is one of the most used ones. I've used your sticks for years. I love it. I love the color. I love the way they feel. What goes into that?
Well, I mean, speaking of the Vic sticks, the Vic Firth sticks, I mean, you know, I have two versions, right? I've got the red one, which is the original, and then which is, you know, it's longer than usual. It's 16 inches, I think, where these are a little bit less. And then the Evolution stick, which was tied in, of course, to the Evolution brand, labeling, cross-marketing, whatever. It was an idea. And the red sticks matched the red drums at the time, and then these sticks matched the maple kit I was playing at the time.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah, that's over there, that kit.
Oh, look at that.
That kit, yeah, that's the other, so looking from here, that's that way, that kit. So that color was, you know, that's why this is, the Evolution stick is this color. Yeah, the original stick, I can't remember the timeline or like how much time was invested in development. I just kind of knew what I wanted. But due to the way that I was playing back then, which was a bit more physical, for lack of better description, I wanted a longer stick, and I wanted the round bead, and. So anyway, that stick became a thing, and it was funny, when I went to study with Freddie when I first went to study with him, he takes my sticks, and he's playing them on the pad, and he goes, well, the first thing you're going to do is you want to get a different stick. I said, why? He says, you'll understand why. So we have to go through a bunch of lessons, and yeah, it basically, it was all about the amount of weight in the front end and the overall balance of the stick. So for the physical stuff, when I was playing more from the back of the stick and playing more into the drums, the red sticks kind of, served the purpose. I was playing way back on the stick, a la GADD and ERSKINE, right? So I really wasn't concerning myself so much with bounce because I was not even holding the sticks in a balanced place, so there wasn't much bounce, thus me putting in more physical effort, thus me getting injuries and, just wrong, basically. Mm-hmm. So with Freddie, the whole thing of, bounce and relaxation came back into play, and yeah, I realized that my stick didn't have enough weight up here, the red one, right, for this whole rebound thing to happen. So I went back to a 5A for a minute, and I told Vic, I said, we gotta come up with something here that works. And what I want different in a 5A is that I want more weight up here, and I want the tip a little bit different, but I don't want the stick to be heavy. Vic's like, well, good luck with that. So this stick took 2.5 years to design.
Wow.
Through hundreds of prototypes. And we finally came up with this SD2 Evolution stick that has now been on the market for 20 years probably. But
God, it's been a long time now. Wow.
Well, I'll take that back. 2001. Yeah, 2001. No, Jesus, 25 years, 26 years. Yeah, so, man, time's flying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, but I learned a lot about stick construction and just stick variances. Even if it's the same stick, I found out, wow, the same stick can weigh different, quite a bit differently, So So I'm down to, the sensitivity, especially with the injury. I actually order my stick by the gram,
Wow.
not by the grams, but individual grams of the stick, which I'm not going to share that number because then everybody will ask for that number.
And then they're going to be out of that.
And I don't know if they'll actually do that. But yeah, I just found out that, that a stick, the same stick can vary probably 10 to 15, maybe even 20 grams.
Wow.
Maybe that's a little much, but quite a bit. And my sticks, these Evolutions, they ship a little bit on the heavy side. So let's put it that way. I generally have to ask for the lighter ones.
Yeah.
But if you go to stores, you can certainly try them and see what feels good to your hand. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, back in the day, man, we would go to Manny's and Joe Casada's store on 46th Street, in Manhattan, and it's like, hi, Joe, I need to buy some sticks. And he would just grab whatever I wanted, the whole thing, put them on the counter, so there'd be 50 sticks sitting there. It wasn't no match pairs and this and all that. It was like, okay, let's roll them first. Let's see what's warped. Okay, those are warped. Put those over there. Now we got these. So now let's see what has the ssame pitch, and what feels the same weight. And, picking out, 4 pairs of sticks took about an hour and a half. It was like a process. So yeah, buying sticks online becomes like a little bit of a crapshoot, cymbals too, for that matter. I mean, we bought cymbals by basically going in and going, how does it sound? How does it feel? How does it play?
So speaking of sound and cymbals, because the Evolution cymbals are some of my favorite cymbals ever. And so what is the story of, because I know you released the Evolution line with Sabian, and I believe before that you were with Zildjian for years, right? So what was the story of you creating the Evolution line, and how did you think to put holes in the cymbals?
Okay. Well, first of all, my first cymbal endorsement was with Sabian in 1983. Yeah.
Wow.
It's if you look up old pictures of me with Chick, even in the early days, and certainly with Simon Garfunkel and anything, in that era, you're going to see the Sabian logo. And, while Robert Zildjian was still alive, it was the funniest story because, at the time, I remember I was somewhere in the States, and I was trying to call the rep because I needed a different ride cymbal, and I couldn't get a hold of him. Wouldn't call me back. And meanwhile, Zildjian's calling like every day, and long story short, I couldn't get in touch with anybody at Sabian, so wow. I went with Zildjian. I left, I went there, and Robert. Every time I would see Robert, he would just look at me and say, it was just a funny backstory of like when he got wind of that. I mean, that guy, whoever he was fired like the next day, especially a few years later. So anyway, yes, the story goes, that I came to a point when I was with Zildjian, because look, I mean, they make great cymbals. Everybody makes great cymbals. There's so much great stuff out there, It was just a period of time where I became very, very unhappy with the crash cymbals. Okay, they had made these cymbals called the Brilliant Ks, and they were fantastic, and I loved them, but they wouldn't hold up. They'd crack, so they stopped making them. And then they started making the crashes heavier. So I was just in a period where it was like, man, I can't find a crash. These are like gongs, they're just like too heavy. And David Vai had just gotten with Sabian maybe a year or two earlier, and he offered me. He said, "You want to come make some cymbals?" And I said, "Maybe." I said, because I know what I want, and yeah, they basically gave me an open palette to create what I wanted, and so I went there. I went there in September of 2001, and to the factory, and I sat there with the guys, and You know, there was some things I said, okay, this, but I want it to be this, you know. And they made some stuff over the next 3 or 4 days. That was it. I mean, I said, you guys got to find a way to make a thin, beautiful sounding cymbal that is tempered in a way that it doesn't crack, you know. So that was the beginning of the evolution. And my directive to them was, look, I want these things to be high fidelity cymbals. I want them to be easy to play. I don't want resistance. I want to hit them with my finger, and I want that thing to speak, you know. Crashes, splashes, whatever, okay? They figured it out. So thus the evolution line.
Wow.
So the other reason I went to Sabian, you know, because I was watching, you know, I was spending a lot of time out in clubs in LA at the time listening to people, and Joey Heredia was one of my buddies and is one of my buddies and favorite players. And Joey would always have some new thing from Sabian. I'm like, what is that, you know? And the thing was that, you know, I was always into the experimentation of sound, right? So I remember listening to GADD on records, and, you know, I was like, God, this crash cymbal, what the heck is he playing? It sounds like I don't know what it sounds like, but it's just fantastic, you know. Then I'd go to see him play, and I realized that half his cymbals were cracked, right?
Wow.
And it created a sound, you know. But I mean, he's not the first one. There's a lot of players you could see on pictures with chunks out of their cymbals. But Steve, I think, took it to the next level, man. It was just, you know. So I went to Zildjian one time. I said, guys, can we make a cracked cymbal, you know? And they're like, oh, what are you, crazy? You nuts? So anyway, that was another reason. No real willingness to, you know, to experiment.
So Sabian was like, we can make a cracked cymbal.
No. It wasn't about that, because obviously making a cracked cymbal doesn't make much sense. But now watch, somebody will come out with one. Anyway, so yeah, so I'm walking around the factory, and I see these little splash cymbals, and they got little holes in them, right? So somebody had come up with this idea already, but it didn't catch. Nothing, you know, at the time. It was like holes in cymbals. Now you can't find a cymbal without a hole in it, but we were first.
Yes.
So I said, if you guys try to put this in a bigger crash to simulate an imperfect cymbal molecularly, that would cause a different sound. No. Okay, well, let's take the 18 evolution and put holes in it according to the size, you know, that would correlate with this small size you got here. And they did it, and I mean, it was just like, you know, right out of the box, man. It was just like, yes, different, you know. So maybe not to the same extent of what, you know, the total idea of it was, but that, you know, that evolution, you know, I mean, the Ozone, I should say, which is the name of it.
Yeah.
That thing started showing up everywhere. Everybody had one. So all of a sudden, every cymbal company on the planet started making holes in cymbals. And yeah, like I said, we were first.
I remember when I first got my Ozone, I was like, this is the greatest cymbal ever. Like, because you could use it as a crash, and it's not as, you know, abrasive as a China or anything like that. It cuts, but it's thin, and it's the best.
And I'll tend to agree, for sure. But you know, that's the thing. Sabian just has that willingness, and they still have that willingness to be creative and try anything, and they were willing to share in the signature profit aspect. I mean, my cymbals I don't get any more money than any other Sabian artist that has a signature line. The only difference for me that I really pushed is that, you know, because at the time Sabian's logos were like huge, right?
Yeah.
And top and bottom signature, big signature, like, and they're like, well, we'll put your name really big on the top. I said no, absolutely not. And I said, I want to make the logo smaller, okay, top and bottom. I want this to be a classy symbol, right? And yeah, I want my name on it because I got something to do with it, but I want it under the bell, just like the Turkish things used to be. You know, it's like you got to look for it. You got to look for it because I don't want my name to be the reason somebody does or doesn't buy a cymbal. I want, because I knew that what this was going to be, that if they could get it right, it's because I knew nobody was making it at that time. Not even Sabian. I mean, nobody was making it. So yeah, they became a thing. And then, you know, so we're talking 5-6 days I was there, and I was getting ready to leave the next day, and we woke up to 9/11. And so I was stuck in Canada, and we're like watching all this, you know, horrific drama develop. And okay, after we spent a few hours doing that and, you know, talking to family and all that stuff, we're like looking at each other and we're like, let's go make some more cymbals. And that's when Legacy got created. I said, I want a jazz cymbal. I want a thinner, you know, dirtier, darker, you know, thing. So let's go make some more. Let's make some jazz cymbals. So I was stuck there another 3 days, I guess, and that's where Legacy was created.
It's crazy because evolution and legacy are going to be a huge part of your legacy. These are some of the greatest cymbals ever made.
They're pretty special. They're very, I think they're very versatile. You know, I've been told that a lot of rock guys use the 20-inch Evolution or the Legacy for a crash, or even bigger sometimes. You know.
How does that make you feel?
Well, I mean, it makes me feel like I knew I was right, because I knew if they made what we were envisioning, what I was hearing, what I knew would I knew the cymbal was, you know, or at least I hoped the cymbal was going to be as successful as what the sonic aspect of the cymbal was telling me, you know, from my perspective of what I like. Now, not everybody, of course, is going to like that, but it seemed to be an overwhelming agreement that it was inviting. That's the thing. It invites you to touch it, to play it. Absolutely. And then the legacy ride, I get a lot of questions about that ride cymbal, you know, of, you know, any videos I might post. And, you know, I have 3 different ride cymbals that I go back and forth with with groups. Either the 20 or the 21, sometimes a 22, but generally a 20 or a 21 Evolution. And at times too, I will use a 20 or a 21 Legacy, which is thin for the jazz stuff. But this is the 22 heavy Legacy, and this is the cymbal I use mostly on the road. And I just posted a nice video with Richard Bona that I put together.
I saw it. It's great.
His tunes. Yeah. That's this cymbal, not this one, but one like it. And that actually brings up a point about the cymbals, because my criteria with Sabian was, I said, I'm not going to do this with you guys unless you can absolutely guarantee me that the weight guideline is so strict for each cymbal, and the method of production, since this is a specialty signature line, I said, I want what is in the stores to be exactly what I play. I don't want any difference, because I want to be able to walk into any clinic and get my cymbal set up, and I'm at home. So if you can't say yes to that, deal's off, you know. And they made it happen, you know.
So cool.
And yeah, and they, I mean, wildly successful, and they're still selling almost as good as they were day one.
That's got to feel real cool, because it's like, it's similar to like maybe when you're driving in a car and you hear someone listening to your music and you're like, oh, that's me, that enjoy my music. But how do you feel when you show up to a concert and you see a drummer playing your cymbal line?
Depends on how they're playing them.
Hey-oh.
No, I listen, I say that because I was going to talk about it before, which is, you know, it's not only the cymbal or the drum or whatever. Of course, it's the touch of the player. How do they make it sound? How conscious are you of how you're striking the cymbal? Where are you placing that? Are you just stuffing these things in and beating the hell out of everything with no concept of right. what they sound like? You know, I mean, that's why for me, I do my own sound on stage, basically, especially for my in-ears, and that's why I always have the overheads. I basically duplicate the way the kit sounds acoustically in my ears. So, and it's really a lot having to do with the fact that I don't want to overplay the cymbals because it's easy to do. So you're emotional, you get passionate, you really hit it hard, But if it's too loud, you're going to be conscious of it. And sitting on top of it with nothing in your ears, I mean, this stuff can be loud. Now, having said that, these cymbals were designed to not be harsh. They were designed to have a fidelity sound, more fidelity, scooped out type of sound. And that's how they project. So, but yeah, it's also, a lot of it is how the individual drummer, treats the touch of the cymbals and the drums, how they sound.
What are you most proud of?
In what sense?
Well, you've created so much, right? You got your cymbal lines, you have all of the music that you've made, you have all of your education. There's so much. There's like so much in the world of Weckl.
Well, honestly, what makes me feel good is being able to continue. To be able to continue doing what I'm doing. That's what makes me feel good. Things like the products and the stuff. I mean, we made the Pro Logic. It's like everything else. The stuff was created. Cymbals, sticks, snares. Even though these aren't a production model, they're limited edition stuff now, but this stuff was all created in as a void, in a necessary thing that I wanted. Like Pro Logics, they make these great pads, but I wanted something small enough and light enough to carry around. So we worked on a pad together called the Travel Light, which is my little signature pad that I carry around. Same with the cymbals. I didn't have what I wanted, so we made them. We made it happen. The sticks, it's all for me first, but I wasn't making these thinking about, okay, who's gonna buy these and make me some money.
Right.
My thing was like, I need to create something that I need first
for yourself.
And I'm not making any compromises on that for somebody else or for a sale, right? So it's not about that. I mean, this little snare drum muffler, same thing. Little devices that I've helped create, and so I always tell drummers, it's like, you do have to think about survival and all that stuff. And I mean, all of this type of thing is a little addition to passive income, and that's, and that's important. But the most important thing is that I have an instrument to express myself without a distraction.
Yes.
That's really the bottom line.
When you were at your peak output, when do you think that was, and what was your team like at that time?
Come on, Elmo! I haven't hit my peak yet.
Okay, well, or right now, is this? I'm talking
kidding.
about not your peak of drumming, but like your peak of output. You know what I mean? Like when you had.
Well, yeah. I mean, no. I'm always. Having me myself said it. I mean, the peak of of output playing wise. Yeah, it was probably, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years ago was peak.
Nice.
57, 58 years old, basically.
Yeah.
That was probably peak. So, just the certain things of mostly injury is, I'm going to probably have to get this dealt with on one level or another to be happy. What do you mean by peak output? Because everything wasn't like created.
I'm thinking because you were talking about like, revenue models, generating income. And so output in terms of when I think about how do I get to Dave Weckl level, and I'm not talking about, of course, there's the practice and all that kind of stuff, but in thinking about do I have a team? Do I have a manager? Do I have an agent? Am I doing everything on my own? Because like I've been self-managed for forever, right? Like everything, even with Jamcard now running everything, I've always just built things on my own and kind of just ran them on my own. But I think as something to explain to drummers, like when you're doing these things, because I think someone could look at you and be like, Dave has his own cymbals. Dave's playing with these huge artists. He has his solo albums. He has all this. Like, is there a team, a Dave Weckl team? Is it just you? Is it you and Steve? Is there like, what was the biggest your team was?
Yeah, it's always been a very small team. I mean, Steve Workin, came to work with Jay and I, many years ago, back pre-convergence. So we're talking at least probably 15 years ago, around that period. And Steve got involved with a lot of things that we were doing, and especially me. I'd call him my marketing manager because he handles so much for me about online media, posts and to socials and just trying to keep track of and get rid of imposters has become a full-time job. I mean, I'm just amazed at the amount of people that have no life, that think they got to act like they're me to comment on my post.
Weird.
It's like, really? I get a life, man. Jesus, it's unbelievable.
So weird.
It's really frustrating. Really frustrating. It's unbelievable to me, but is the way of the world, So yeah, in a lot of senses, Steve has been, he's the co-founder and, my partner in my online school. He's the president and runner, he's the organizer and, CEO of Drum Fantasy Camp, which is, one of the biggest, best drum camps on the planet that I'm going to, by the way. I'm actually going to be there in August.
In LA.
August, in LA with Peter Erskine, with Gavin Harrison, and with Dennis Chambers. It's going to be a knockout.
Great lineup.
Time this time. Yeah, it'll be fun. But yeah, I had a manager for a hot second back in the Chick days when Chick's manager, Ron Moss, was offering his services. I did it for a while, and then we both agreed it was not fair, and I didn't want to do it anymore. He didn't really want to take advantage of me like that. So
yeah.
Let that go. I haven't had a manager since. We have booking agents, and I kind of let. My booking agent here in the States, we kind of parted ways because it just became, I just didn't agree with the way things were on the way that it's done in the business here. I just didn't like the way it was done, and we couldn't make any money, basically. So we parted ways. I mean, she was great. It was a great relationship, and she's great. But our agents in Europe, in Italy, Patrizio Chiosa and Paolo Marotta, he's who we call Bilo, and occasionally Alex Travi does some work for us too over there. So, but Patrizio, I've been with him since the Stern days, and
Nice.
And we've had a long relationship, and they do everything. When they book a tour, they do everything. They book the flights, the hotels, the routing. They do it all. They're like full on assuming what some people in this country consider managerial roles. Right? But yeah, the team is it's pretty much all myself. Maybe somewhat to my detriment. I could use help for sure. I just don't. Maybe it's coming that I'll consider. Getting a part-time personal assistant of some kind, but it's so hard. It's so hard to bring people into your world, to trust them, to give them enough info to do what they have to do, and then I got to end up doing half of it anyway. I still
I think there's a lesson in here, and to pass that on, like someone may think of Dave Weckl may have this huge team or all these people, but it's like you're making everything happen yourself. Like when I look at your tour dates, everything you have going on, your camps, your teaching, your everything, there's a lot, but it's like you're operating it, you're executing all of that. Like there's so much email work for you to be doing outside of drumming.
There's a lot of administration. Sometimes I don't get out of the office until 3 p.m, man. I'm in there from 9 a.m. And it's like there's so much to handle.
You're running the business outside of the music itself. Yeah,
you're running. Yeah, you got to. Yeah, but it does. I mean, it really does make sense to surround yourself with people that know more than you do about certain things that can help, that are not there to take advantage of you in a financial way just based on some arbitrary system. But but it certainly helps to get input from people, and that's why networking and just talking with people and getting ideas, how do they do it, what's the it's I learn something every time I talk to a fellow musician friend, whatever, about how they're doing things. So it's important to do that. It's just also important to not give it away. It's you got to be very careful
Absolutely.
to not think or to think that you can't do it. And you just gotta ask questions. You have to ask questions. I mean, sometimes yes, we still need to hire lawyers to go over contracts of things that if we don't feel comfortable ourselves. Because now there's just too much to look out for. With the internet and all of that stuff. Yeah. But I mean, so yeah. I mean, I surround my family and personal people in my life don't get involved with my business. I don't do that. So yeah, it's a separate thing and Mr. Workin is certainly very helpful for me. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
Musically, because we talk about business, but to get back to musically for a second, how do you prepare for a solo?
I mean, I really don't prepare for it. What I prepare for is possibly the palette or the rule set that I would set on myself. Like going back to Mike Stern, for example. A lot of drum solos in the show, a lot of, similar songs that have drum solos. And when we would play, we'd have 2 sets, for example, in front of the same audience in one night. And each ending of the set ended with a song that, in my mind, kind of had the same writing formula and basic idea of the way it was, and a drum solo over a vamp at the end, right? So part of what I teach in my online school is a couple things. One of them is study and practice and preparation for spontaneous creativity. The second one is implying rules, and I use rule sets. And what I mean by that is, let's say I have these 2 solos, right? So in the first solo, just for some silly thing, right? I would say, okay, for the first solo, I'm going to do some kind of Latin cowbell stuff, right? So the cowbell will be included, and everything I play in this solo is going to be in a structured in a way with what I would call, let's say precise subdivisions, okay? So everything that I would play would be fairly easy to transcribe in the sense of it would make sense, from a mathematics standpoint. And the second solo in the night, I can't touch that cowbell. And there's going to be a section in the solo where I do what I've coined the term to be loose phrasings, okay? And that has to do with more floating subdivisions that are not mathematical. They are not worked out. I don't know what they are. It's kind of a Jack DeJohnette jazz approach. Okay, it's more liquid. It's a better way. But I'm still keeping the quarter note going. So I'm not in a position where I'm just BSing my way through it and playing some other time signature or just playing something completely irrelevant to what the time is. It's not that. I'm very conscious of where the quarter note is, where I am, because I'm dictating it, right? I'm outlining it here. And then the phrasings become that, and there's corners here and there, but there may be more over the bar line stuff, displaced stuff within the fluid liquid phrasing. So, and that is enough for me to separate the rule set of the solos, but the content, never. I never think about what I'm going to play. I'm going to think about, like I said, the structural limitations or guidelines, rules, whatever you want to call it, for each solo. That's about as far as it goes. Yeah,
I love it.
That's what I like to do.
I've been sitting here looking at your drum set. Would you play us out, Dave Weckl?
Okay. I was just recording a kind of a funky thing. So the drums are a little on the dead side, but snare drum is pretty wide open.
Oh yeah.
No distant room mic, but here, if I do this, I'm just going to turn up this fader. You can hear this distant room mic's kind of neat. There's a little bit.
Dave Weckl.
Oh, that's funny. Love the crowd. That's great.
Man,
that's cool.
Thank you so much for the time, Dave. It was so great to get to hang with you and get inside your brain and just learn more about you. And I appreciate it, man. It's so cool. It's such an honor.
Lots of fun, Elmo. Thanks for having me, man. And, just to everybody out there, thank you so much for continued listening and support, and just have fun, man. Have fun playing. All right. And thank you, Elmo. That was a lot of fun, man. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Dave Weckl.
And fade.
That's great.